Welcome to April's Garage. Tyler has a little issue with Hagerty right now. You're a little upset.
Yes.
They released their bull market cars to watch out for the values to be going up in the next few years. And not one of his cars is on there, which is proof you're not working with them.
No, I'm not paying them off because, yeah, in previous years, like half the cars are on a list that I have owned or own in the last 4 or 5 years or whatever that they've been doing it.
Yeah.
And this time, yeah, not a one. Bummer.
Is that something like, do you look at this list and like put that in the back of your head when you're shopping for cars?
Right. Well, a couple of these I have owned, I suppose. I have owned, but not currently.
I mean, like, where do you value their list? Is this something that you really think that they're predictors of the future, or do they hit or miss?
This is one of their biggest things that they do every single year. And Hagerty is one of the giants when it comes to the classic car market because they insure the most classic cars. They have their own auction now. They have the tracker for values. So, you know, we used to say, like, you set a record at Barrett-Jackson, then everybody else, you know, raises the values of the cars. Similar to this. You get on this list, and it's supposed to, you know, make a car. But I feel like they've been doing it so many years now that they're sort of grabbing for straws because it's like, well, we already did that one, we already did that one, we already did that.
They're running out of cars.
They're running out of cars because some of the cars on this list are really bad.
Don't know. You can't predict the future. So you never know what's going to happen.
Well, you can tell. I mean, the car at the top of their list is the E-Type Jaguar, the very early Series 1 cars.
Right, and there's a new appreciation for the real tried and true old school Jaguars right now. For some reason, I don't know what happened.
The thing that I have been seeing, though, are prices on the decline. Maybe not for these very first year, the prettiest, obviously, E-Type Jags is what they're talking about. But I mean, like, a very narrow window. But the E-Type market on the whole, at least from what I'm seeing, and I'm not like doing data points and all that stuff, we've seen on Bring a Trailer, we actually talked about one where it had sold for tens of thousands less a couple of years later. And there seems to be a decline in interest in these, obviously with Jaguar being so weird now, but also it's just being so old that they're sort of losing the people that would want to own these things because they're literally dying out. I love the cars personally. They drive amazing for their time. It's an amazing, beautiful machine, but the restoration costs, the ownership costs, and long-term...
You're not feeling it. And then you're saying the generation died out because they had a lot of prominence and a lot of winning history back in the day, and so people aren't as interested in them anymore. You sold yours kind of right before that new marketing trend came out to Jimmy's World, who then drove it from Kansas.
Oh, you're talking about the XKR.
To Florida. Yeah, not this one, but one of your Jaguars. Did he make it?
He made it just fine. Everything's good, with that. But he also had an old E-Type, a 1966 a convertible.
Right.
And I think I sold it for $90,000, somewhere around there.
Right.
And that car's probably worth $60,000 now.
Okay.
In a couple of years later. So to me, maybe these early ones are the exception because they are much rarer and they're seeing a bull market with that. But the E-Type on the whole, the prices on them are pretty crazy too. A value number one condition, $260,000. A big swing to like a project's only $60,000, and that's because the restoration cost it's insane.
Right.
So,
but they're getting their numbers from somewhere. Like they know what they're talking about. They're a driving force in the industry, and it's a beautiful car.
They do. They know something, obviously, but on the whole, old British sports cars, the early Jags and then the early Aston Martins, have been on the decline. And Hagerty's even mentioned that like the DB5, DB6 have been on the decline. So
what do you think Jeremy Clarkson would say about that? You're saying old British cars are on the decline.
He loves these. Yeah, he loves them. So next on the list, Lamborghini Gallardo, which...
You sold yours.
They've gone through about every single other Lamborghini right now, so they have to get down to the Gallardo.
What would you say the Gallardo is like the answer to equivalent in the Ferrari world?
A Ferrari 360, a 430. It was in that era when the Gallardo came out, and it was certainly a big hit. It was the best-selling Lamborghini of all time until the Huracan came and replaced it. They made tens of thousands of these, and there's tons of them. There's just tons of them for $80,000 to $150,000, depending on the spec and how rare they are. Manuals can be even more if there's some later ones because they get very rare. But
is this one where people like to do manual conversions on?
Not yet, because there's not a huge delta between the prices. You know, like $50,000 to do a manual conversion.
Right.
And they're not a 50 grand swing yet, so it doesn't make any sense. You just go and buy a manual car. But I don't see how, like, this has always been around a $100,000 car for an early Gallardo, for a nice one. There's so many of them. I just don't see it, because you go up 50 grand more and you get a Huracan, which is a better car in every way. And it's not like these are a crazy old school analog experience. They have an e-gear, unless it's the gated manual one.
Right.
It's just an older,
right. There's
not
too
as good
many of
experience.
them to be on this list, is what you're saying.
I love them. They're great. I'd love to own a Superleggera. Those are extremely rare. I think I would put the Superleggera on this list if you're going to do a Lamborghini Gallardo, because there's so few of them, like under 300 in the US for the first generation. And they look really cool. They're lightened by a little bit, but it's all because the carbon fiber interior looks really nice. And then they've harshened things up a little bit to make it more sporty, which they're already pretty sporty cars. That would be a good one. They probably just couldn't get their hands on one for like this test or whatever. So they just went Gallardo in general.
Well, I know Ed kind of gets on you for selling your Gallardo. You had a Gallardo, right?
Well, I had a Gallardo, I had a Murcielago.
Oh, the Murcielago.
He didn't want me to sell the Murcielago, but I had somebody in my ear saying I would never ride with you in that because it's a bright orange Lamborghini, and I just don't.
No, it's fine. It's great. It's just like very loud and like, look at me, look at me, look at me.
Right. Yeah. So we got together and you said, that Murcielago, don't pick me up in that.
You're making me
if I
sound
can't
like the
take a
biggest
supermodel
brat
in my Lamborghini Murcielago, then I guess I should probably just get rid of it, you know? But also the other reason, the Roadster is just terrible. The toupe, it's stupid and all that stuff. And I really want a coupe Murcielago.
Okay.
And that was the other reason for getting rid of it. So, yeah.
Okay, good. At least there's two reasons and not just one.
Right. So they say value is $157,000, what a nice Gallardo's worth, up 7.4%. That's it from 2019, and inflation has been like 3 billion %. So like they're saying this is a buy and hold car. I don't know. The next one though is really stupid. 1984 to 1990 Ford Bronco II.
What? Why? Why is this? Really?
Well, Jake mentioned because he has a Ranger, he really wants these to go up because then he can get Ranger parts. But he's thinking they're all gone because everybody rolled theirs over.
Yes,
they take a turn and it
died in a fiery, terrible rollover crash in these, and so there are only two that exist, and that's why they're valuable right now.
So the full-size Broncos have blown up. They are very expensive. The first generation baby Broncos have blown up. So this is all that's left, and they're saying the rising tide floats all boats. So yes, the Bronco II, which can't go 80 miles an hour. And
really?
they're terrible.
I mean, but people aren't going to get it and use the original engine. They're going to Ella swap it and kind of trick it out, and that's where the value is. I don't think an original Bronco II, the value's going to go up, but they're resto modding them, and that's where the real money is for these Broncos.
They're silly. So the value range, they're saying the nicest one on the planet is worth $26,000. The worst one on the planet is worth $2,600, which they're totally guessing. But the market, their graphs, it's been flat for the last 5 years. So, yeah.
I'm just like, I gotta say, they are still cool. That boxy look and that old school Bronco style, which it's hit a peak. Like anything that's really popular and trendy kind of goes out of fashion. As far as it came up, it's going to go back down. And this is kind of the leftover, here, let's still get that look with the Bronco II, but we don't want to be as trendy as the original Bronco.
Don't do it. Don't do it. You'll get the experience of a
Is there any way
crappy
to fix that?
tin can of the 80s.
So you don't fall over?
No.
No, nothing? Just put some heavy weights, like car batteries, kind of in the floor of the car to weigh it down.
Yeah.
There you go. Get turn it an electro mod.
Yeah, next on the list is something that I think we already missed the boat on, a 1978 to 83 Datsun 280ZX. So, the end of this iconic shape of the Datsun.
Right.
And the louvers, they're a really cool car. Not very fast, but looks neat, fun to drive.
I feel like you don't see a lot of them, which is probably why they're on the list.
Like my dad's generation, this was the cool import car to have in the 70s and 80s. So I totally get it. But I feel like that age of buyers already have gotten their money and bought these because they are very expensive. Yeah, a number one condition on these, $70,000.
Right.
Is that a $70,000 driving experience? Absolutely
not. But
not.
look how fast it drops down. A number 2 condition is $32,000. That's a huge gap. So you're talking a concourse restoration, better than new, we're at $70,000.
It's not a $32,000 driving experience. If you're looking at Japanese cars that haven't left the station yet, I think Hagerty's just kind of stuck because they've covered all of these. The Honda S2000, the train has not left the station yet, and that is a car that will never be replaced.
Right.
An NA or NB Miata. Once again, very, very cheap. They will always be very, very cheap, but I think that's been on the list of things that are still affordable at this point that in the future might be a little bit harder to buy.
Would you say these are more rare, though, and that's why they're picking on them for the value to go up?
I suppose, but like I said, we've already missed the boat on these. They're already hot, really desirable cars, and I just don't see them. I don't get it.
You don't see them going to the moon this coming year.
And the last one is the last Godzilla, the last Nissan GTR from 2009 till basically now. And yes, they're very expensive. They're, $60,000 for a good one that hasn't been heavily modified or whatever. But that's it. And that was an icon of its day, similar to the Bugatti Veyron and all, of the cars of the mid-2000s that people really, really wanted. And as the decades go by, I think that will be something that people look back on like, I want to get a nice one of those and not one that's been modified to death and ruined. And that'll be a big one. But so I don't really get that one. The Volvo P1800 is another car that I feel like is too old, that nobody cares about.
It's gorgeous. Look at those fins on the back and the styling. That is sexy.
There is probably 1% of our audience that knows about the TV show Roger Moore, The Saint. The James Bond, it was a TV show before he was James Bond, where he drove one of these.
Gorgeous. That's a gorgeous
car.
No,
but it is a beautiful car, styled by Ghia, I believe. So Italian styled, for Volvo, Swedish automaker. They say the prices have gone up 47% since 2019, which I was very surprised that the interest for these has gone up that much. Value range number one, $77,000. A hoopty is $4,600, so obviously a big swing. But obviously restoring a $4,600 one would be way more than $77,000 for a perfect one. So you buy the nicest one that you can. I didn't realize that these were appreciating that much. But
they're sexy cars, and I'm glad this is on the list because it brings it to attention. It gives it some provenance. Like, that's a really cool car that hasn't been on my radar. It hasn't been on your radar. So I think this is a cool one to put on here.
I suppose if you're comparing it to something else, it'd be like the Volkswagen Carmen Ghia, because that's an Italian design car. Volkswagen built it for reliability. I would have a Volvo P1800 any day of the week over
What is it
Carmen
about the
Ghia.
Carmen Ghia? Like, whenever we have one come through Barrett-Jackson, you and all the guys are like, oh, look at that.
It's
You're
neat.
excited about it.
It's neat, but it's still a Volkswagen Bug at its core. And it's not a fancy experience. These are actually, they have some quality, they have some fanciness to them, and they're not that expensive. So I suppose I get this one, and I didn't realize that they were popping up that much. The next one is something that we just reviewed and talked about. So I totally agree with this one. 2006 to 2008 Magnum SRT8.
Well, they specify the SRT8, which is the one that you
Hemi,
want.
400 horsepower. Yeah, we drove it. We liked it.
It sounds so good. There's nothing else that sounds like that with the Hemi, and it's beautiful. You don't expect it because it's like, it's the mom mobile taking the kids, to sports and stuff. But like, no, this has got some power. This is sexy.
Yeah, this is most certainly the last V8 station wagon that Mopar will ever make. There's just no way that they will do it again. Some SUVs or whatever, but they won't do it again. So I totally get it.
I'm so happy they put this on the list because I feel like Hagerty's like fancy and elegant, and they're gonna put this on the list, a wagon like this. Like, this is cool, old school, like muscle feeling. Like, thank you, Hagerty, for throwing that on there.
I want one.
You do?
I really, really want one. The only reason I didn't buy that silver one that we reviewed is because it's silver. And I want like a loud Mopar color of some kind.
Well, and the value, they're saying the number one conditions right under $50,000.
Yeah, that's pretty surprising. There must have been one with like 200 miles that sold for that much. Because normally they're like, I guess number two is at $20,000 to $30,000 for a nice one with like 30 to 100,000 miles. So yeah, that definitely
How would you say
tracks.
those Hemi engines hold up over time? No.
They drop a valve, they make noise, and like they're not good. But
what's it?
Like the original Hemi
you're talking about?
The original Hemi wasn't good. They warrantied the original Hemi for I think a year,
Right.
like a very limited amount of time and low mileage because they knew it was a fragile racing engine that people were going to go race and blow up. So it wasn't much of a warranty on the original one. It was a very fragile engine. And these, they put in everything and they don't hold up all that well, unfortunately.
It's wild that warranty only for a year because you know it's going to be a little sketchy.
Right. On these later ones, the warranty is longer. It's long gone now. And all the valve train issues and the Hemi ticks and all that stuff. It's bad, but it is serviceable. We're talking, well, at least with my Hellcat, we had to do everything, so it was $10,000 to go through. But if it's just dropped a valve and you have to do the heads and all that stuff, $3,000-$4,000. I mean, compared to modern cars, that's not the end of the world where they do stupid things like it's a engine out tear down for a water pump on a Ford Flex or Edge or whatever. Like there's just so much stupid stuff nowadays to where that doesn't seem as bad. It's just, it's so dumb. But speaking of dumb, the Ferrari 400 is on here. Which, what? They've run out of Ferraris that are still cheap to put on this list, I think, because this was a hunk of junk.
Was it the first one they put an automatic in?
I think you're right, and it's a pretty terrible, like, Borg-Warner 3-speed, like, good Fresnella swapper or whatever. To bolt up to it. But yeah, they have a 12-cylinder that is way low on power, like way low on power for it being a 12-cylinder. They have that terrible slush box unless you can get one in a manual. The electronics on Ferrari were at their worst at this point.
Right.
So
why do you think they would put this on the list if you're so against it?
They've just run out of options, I feel like. But they're saying price-wise it's gone up 50.9% since 2019.
Right.
What? And number one condition, $82,000. Number two condition, $59,000.
Right. But you're not a fan. You're saying this should not be on the list. If you could put a Ferrari on this list to replace this one, what would it be?
Well, the 456, the following generation, which had so much more refinements, active aerodynamics, a much more spirited, easier to own engine. A really fun driving experience, even though it does sort of look like a Ford Probe a little bit. Way better car for the same money. But I think that's been on their list in the past, probably.
Sure.
Or you go the generation before it, but they're more expensive, obviously. So, next on the list, 2002 to 2006 Mini Cooper S, which I love these.
It's a very specific year, though. Like, what is it about the 02 to 06?
Well, it's this generation where it's still the supercharged four-cylinder, the original Mini Cooper to come out in the S, and the Italian Job with Charlize Theron and Wahlberg. This is the car they were driving around in. They're so cheap for what they are, so good looking. Minis after this, just kept getting bigger and bigger and not as cool in my opinion.
I love the ones with the barn doors on the back because they're just so little and so cute.
The mini like Clubman or ones that look like a hearse?
Yeah.
No, this is the cool one.
No way.
Absolutely. I totally agree with this choice. I had one that was a Millimia edition.
You're agreeing with?
Yes.
Whoa, are you?
I had a Millimia edition, one of these.
Yeah.
It was really fun, but it needed everything. Again, about 100,000 miles.
Right. What did the
It needed everything to like the engine taken out, torn apart. It's not horrifically expensive to do though. It's I think $4,000 start to finish for clutch.
What's cool about the Millimia edition?
Else.
Like, what did that give it to you?
It's just a cool sort of theme where they put the racing graphics on it. They made it look like an original racing Mini Cooper back in the day. So,
but nothing in the engine or anything like that. Just it looked cool.
Right. So value number one, still very, very low. $16,200, $12,000 for a nice condition one. Only up 4% since 2019, which compared to everything else, these things have stayed flat, and I don't think that will continue. But you do have some competition. But I will say, if I was shopping for a little itty-bitty compact like this Mini Cooper that's kind of old that I want to just buy, put away, drive occasionally, it would be a Fiat 500 Abarth any day of the week.
Because of the Super Bowl commercial?
No, not because of the commercial, but because of the sound. They sound amazing for what they are, and really fun driving experience. Much smaller, like it's much smaller, tossable, fun car.
Tossable. That's a good word when we're talking about cars.
Right, you just toss it around.
I want this car because it's tossable.
Well, not in the tossable like that, but yeah. So next on the list, 97 to 2001 Honda Prelude.
Really? Mm-hmm. What? Okay, this is interesting. Please explain,
They're great cars. Really well built.
But it's a Honda Prelude. Come on.
It's of that generation where that engine is just worshipped. That VTEC four-cylinder. And they are pretty cheap for what they are. Like a value condition number one, $25,000. Number two, $17,000 for the Honda that everybody wanted in the 90s and 2000s.
Right.
You know, you had to get this. The Civic was cheaper, and a lot of people didn't go for the Prelude because it was more expensive, but it was so good looking and way more refined than the Civic. They're trying to make it, you know, more luxurious, just like a nicer experience. And it does look so good.
It does look good.
But price-wise, they've gone up 87% since 2019, which I'm surprised. It's still really cheap. So, yeah, you should have bought one in 2019.
That's a lot. I feel like I'm seeing a lot of value on the engine itself and not kind of the car.
It's still a good-looking car. It's comfortable. Yeah. I'm way into these. I totally get it. Second to last is the G500. So like the first U.S. market G-Wagon. They were imported, you know, through the gray market in unofficial ways. But this is finally when the G-Wagon came to the U.S.
Right.
Not an AMG, not, you know, the 63, the 55, any of that. Just the original G500.
Like bare bones. Stripped down.
They're not bare bones. They're still very luxurious, but it's not any performance or special variant at all. They're just saying these are the most practical, the most usable, and still the most affordable.
I wouldn't say practical when I'm talking about G-Wagons, but they are great cars. They're sexy. And what I love about them is they don't update them drastically. So you could get an old one and it still looks new, kind of like Mac does with their, you know, updates and stuff like that. Like, you know, one from 20 years ago looks very similar to one that's being born today.
Right. So since 2019, they're up 15%, so not all that much. Number one condition, 74,500, 53,200 for number two condition. One other thing I'm noticing, they're seeing a high sell-through rate on these things. So they brought it for auction, ones that don't meet reserve. Not that often, 71% of them do sell. So they're just pretty hot when they do sell. So
they're sexy cars, and with the boom of that first generation Bronco body style being really boxy, I feel like, you know, you're saying rising tides lift everybody, whatever the term is, but that's where that G-Wagons come in.
I get it. They do tend to rust very easily.
Yeah.
That's a big problem with the G-Wagons around the windshield frames, on the bottom of the doors, the bottom of the hatch. And they are, I mean, they do drive like trucks.
They drive, well, they remind me of more of like a Jeep drive, where they're very rigid. They're not as luxurious as you would think they are, but they are very sexy.
Right. For my money, probably in the next year or two, I would buy an Ineos Grenadier and have the same experience in a much more newer vehicle.
Really?
But then you're buying a depreciating vehicle, I suppose, rather than an appreciating vehicle. But with the Mercedes, you'll have a lot more maintenance as these things age, because like the window regulators fail on these like crazy. They talk about them being reliable, but
Grenadier's kind of a shot in the dark. You don't know in the next 10 years if they're going to fall the way of Fisker or where they're headed.
Right. Well, their top choice. So this is their members' choice. The DeLorean is their choice of the year.
Yes. This is so good.
I've had a DeLorean.
This is so great.
They seriously say that the DeLoreans are going to be appreciating value. So they're up 73.4% since 2019. But I would imagine they peaked in 2022. They've been soft ever since 2022. I feel like they've been declining in price, at least from what I've seen. But I get that they've been up a lot since 2019.
Well, the generation that loves them grew up when Back to the Future came out.
And they bought them.
When did they come out? In the 90s?
1985. Well, it came out in 1981. They were failed, you know, John DeLorean trying to make their own car company.
No, when did the movie come out?
1985.
Okay.
Yes, the original movie, 1985, it exploded these things.
Right.
And everybody that wanted one, that wants to be Marty McFly, has bought one.
Right. And it just brings up the nostalgia of growing up and being, you know, fun watching a movie car. And so before that, like Smokey and the Bandit or Batman, and now you have the DeLorean. And the thing is, didn't they make a lot of them? So
They made enough, right. And Bob, most recently, had, our friend Euro Agent Bob, had one that was like under 2,000 miles. And he bought it, I think, in 2023, early 23.
Did he sell it? Because he should hold it.
No. He shouldn't have held it. He has one that's his personal DeLorean.
Right.
So Bob priced that DeLorean at like $15,000, $20,000 less than at the peak what they were selling for at auction.
Right.
But he bought it after the peak in 2023. And it took him over a year to sell this thing. And he knows how to advertise, he knows how to sell cars. So it took him a long time to find a buyer to sell it because, like I said, everybody who wanted one has bought it. So, and then they buy it and then they know what the driving experience is like. It's like, you know, 100 and something horsepower,
1980s car.
wheezy, PRV, fiberglass frame, just very loose.
They're great though. They're fun. Like anytime you pull into a car show or anything, no matter what, even though they're not expensive cars, people are still walking over them like they're $1 million cars. And there's the prominence with the, the Cybertruck right now and being all the stainless steel.
Right.
And, DeLorean Motor Company 12, DMC was their model number because they were going to be $12,000. And then they ended up being, $24,000? Doubled when they actually sold, which is the same thing that happened with the Cybertruck. So there's this parallel story happening with John DeLorean and maybe the Cybertruck and Elon Musk. We'll see what happens.
Well, let me frame it this way, April. They say a number one condition DeLorean is $100,000.
Yes.
For a little bit more, you could buy a Buick GNX.
More than that. Come on.
Let's say $130,000 for a nice GNX. $150,000 for a perfect GNX.
Yes. Yes.
Is the DeLorean within striking distance of a GNX?
Fair. That is not fair.
It's not. It's not. As far as the rarity of the GNX, as far as like an 80s icon. So many amazing 80s icons. Like a Ferrari Testarossa is around the same price as a DeLorean in this metric.
I just think they're fun. They're great cars. They're the movie cars that captured our childhood, and I understand why they're going, especially with the Cybertruck craze, and they look similar. You want a Cybertruck and a DeLorean, and that is a cool collection.
Hagerty, you drunk.
This is cool. Good job, Hagerty.
Yeah.
Way to put a list together.
Get off the sauce. Just mad. Put down the pipe, Hagerty.
You're just mad because none of your cars are on this list. There you go. Thanks so much for watching.